My feeling is that the desired effect for the individual punching the window there is to feel superior, not to teach a lesson. To feel superior, to feel powerful, to feel in control. That it's an ego boost for them. Has nothing to do with teaching a lesson. That's my deep suspicion. All right, guys, we're back again with the PEM podcast. Had a bit of a long week here. I had the flu pretty good, so that slowed me way down. Getting back to things now, we're going to be taking a look at a few videos as usual. We got the political election year happening right now. I don't pay attention to it. I don't really care. My mother would love to steal my vote and use it towards her agenda, which is not one I really agree with. It's kind of funny. She's always trying to get me to do that. I don't, I kind of agree with George Carlin a bit. If you ever heard him speak, he talks about he doesn't vote himself and he doesn't see it as producing any results in either direction. That basically, to quote him, he said, America was bought and sold a long time ago, and I tend to agree with that. I don't know what it means as far as maybe at the local municipal government level, your vote has some sort of impact. But ultimately, we've allowed corporate money to completely embed itself into our, supposed democracy. And we had come across a video that was pretty good by a guy who was speaking. The speaker was Shahid Bolson. It was on a channel called Middle Nation. And he basically describes what I'm talking about, that you're deluding yourself if you think your vote's actually making a difference, or if red or blue is really making a difference, and that everything's sort of constructed in a way to support the wealthy and to support the ruling corporate interests, which is exactly my feeling on all of this. I think it's very convoluted and a lot of complex dynamics going on. So I think sometimes people get the thought that people like myself might be saying there's like a Dr. Claw behind it all, kind of pulling the strings. I don't think it's that simple. I think it's more that large moneyed interests are pursuing what's going to benefit them, and that money and that power has the ability to deeply impact what the results are. And that gets refined over time. The more candidates that we have who are already beholden to the campaign contributions that are made to put them in office, over time that builds, and the more power those corporate interests have over, the elected officials and our supposed representatives. So I think that's what's going on a very dynamic and complex level. And I don't think that the results will be that different between Kamala or Trump. I think it's they lean, I guess you got the women's issues and the abortion stuff, and then you've got guns rights and border strength and those issues. But I think in the end, it's all pretty much the same thing. And the same group of very wealthy corporate interests will continue to benefit quite well, regardless of who gets elected. And whatever happened with that assassination attempt, I don't know. That was a real attempt. It wasn't a fake. You don't almost hit somebody in the head with a bullet when you're trying to fake something. But whatever that was, very also murky water there. Who knows how deep that goes? And I'm definitely sure there's a conspiracy involved. But yeah, whole thing's really strange. But I don't subscribe to any of it, because I sort of see it as wag the dog bullshit that's going on, trying to convince us that our vote means that much, right? And it's mind-blowing that so many people are caught up in that, to think that you have this real sense of choice, and the majority of the population of people are probably, I don't know what the average salary is right now, but I imagine the average is probably below $50,000 a year, right? Or somewhere around there. I wonder what the average is. We need some statistics on that. But, not a single one of the representatives in office at the highest levels are anywhere near those, coming from positions of that, lower middle class to low income class and actually having a say in our political system. So, yeah, I have no faith in it, none whatsoever. And I'm dealing with sort of the corruption that goes on with it, even at the local level with the Carlsbad case that I've been fighting for years now, and seeing the cronyism and nepotism and the way that these politicians band together to support their own interests and kind of maintaining their position of power and status to where they're at. And yeah, I see it firsthand even at that local level. So yeah, no real optimism there for me. I don't think the only way to change that would be to, I've mentioned before, get taxpayer money involved with funding campaigns and not allow a single private interest donation. Anyway, also this week's been interesting for me. Been thinking about at the deeper level stuff, the philosophical level of things, and belief systems, and I've started to refine further the 8 root fundamentals of mental, emotional, spiritual skill development. And it's interesting because it was all by accident, really. I didn't choose the order in any specific way other than what seemed to kind of come up first for me. And the 4th root fundamental, which is right in the smack in the middle of the 8, is beliefs. And I'm starting to kind of think that beliefs are possibly the most important aspect of how we approach life. And I think that beliefs are affected by experience and what our, experience of our lives are, what we're taught, of course. Some people believe what's written in a book solely and only, and how that book is interpreted to them, and I find that interesting that people do not seem to think for themselves in those particular groups. Some people will only absorb certain types of scientific information and even eliminate others in order to support maybe a very materialistic or atheistic viewpoint. I think there's a lot of bias going on. And I'm starting to look at, well, how did I arrive at what I believe even further than I already have examined that, and started to realize, the bottom line is we don't understand reality. We don't understand what even matter is. At the point where we've arrived at the model of quarks and leptons as the fundamental building blocks, we aren't sure that's the case. And of course, there was string theory, which may have some problems. This kind of two-dimensional vibrational strings, which I don't even fully understand the theory, is an interesting one. So we just don't know what the nature of this reality is, even the fundamental aspects of what material things are made of. And then we don't understand consciousness. So there's an interesting arrogance within humans that we know somehow. The theories that I pose aren't that I know, it's that they seem to be effective in promoting peace and a certain sense of managing in a toxic world at a better level than other systems of thought. That gets even tricky because some people will say that their system is the best and negate what's really happening internally for them only because they have a pride and attachment around what they believe. So this gets so strange when you get into ego. And of course, that's what this whole channel is about ego. So we're going to talk more at length, and I'm also releasing videos actually I need to link them with the PEM podcast because I've got the Psychedelist YouTube, so I might link those too because I do other videos other than these, so I'll probably somehow link those up, find a way to do that. But yeah, guys, we're going to get some videos, see what we got today. I'll do some reactions. Let's see what we have.
Have you ever smoked?
I have.
Okay.
And I inhale. I did inhale.
Smoke marijuana, okay.
It was a long time ago.
Harris explains her pro-pot stance and admits that she indulged in the substance while in college. Then this exchange happened.
What does Kamala Harris listen to?
What were you listening to when you was high? What was on? What song?
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, definitely Snoop. Tupac, for sure.
Wow.
So Kamala Harris said she's smoked before. In fact, she said she's tried it when she was in college. And she said when she was high, she was listening to Tupac and Snoop. Ladies and gentlemen, Kamala Harris graduated college in 1986. Snoop and Tupac
Oh.
came out in the 90s.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Now we see why she said this.
Best rapper alive. Tupac. He said he lives on.
He's dead, yeah.
Wow. This woman is just plain out lying and saying what she thinks black people want to hear. That's sad. People, that's sad.
Interesting.
Pandering to black people just so you put her in office, just to do nothing for you.
Huh.
You guys wake up.
I mean, I don't know if it's just pandering to black people or not. He made it about race there. I think it's pandering to people who like hip hop genre and are the younger or even X generation crowd, right? Because that would be my generation in the '90s, Tupac and Snoop and those guys, and you know that time frame. The '80s would have been like Eazy-E and shit like that. So it would have been a different time for hip hop at that time for sure. It was definitely not Snoop and Tupac. But regardless of race or not, yeah, it is kind of interesting to see someone just trying to be what they want to be perceived as. Clearly, if the time frames don't add up, and they don't, based off of what he just showed there, that isn't. But nothing shocking there for me, guys. Like, these are people who are trying to win a popularity contest based off of the money that's given them from these corporate interests. And I wonder if she'd even been coached on that. I don't know. Probably not. I feel if they coached it, maybe they would have sewed up those holes a little more. Who knows what she actually listens to? It's probably not hip hop. It's interesting. Who knows? Like, everyone's different, but yeah, I definitely see nothing surprising. For me, there's nothing shocking there. I don't know if there's people out there shocked by that. It's strange to me. I mean, what do you think? What world do you think we're living in? These people are going to say whatever they can say, whatever, to get you to vote for them. That's what it is. There's no integrity there. There's no real value-based like ethics going on. This is simply whatever it takes.
I got a kid in my fucking car, and you're driving like an asshole. You want to videotape me? Fuck you!
Is that all?
That's somebody you gotta leave the fuck alone. Bro, supposed to get the fuck out of there. Get the car and drive.
Huh.
Last part was just a comment from some random person.
Yeah, interesting comment. I don't know. Those type of videos are interesting to me because we don't know what happened, but nothing will justify that, first of all. It wouldn't matter what happened because in the end, if a criminal offense took place, then, and this unfolded in some sort of major traffic incident or crash, then police are involved, investigation happens, right? Insurance companies get involved. It's interesting. This is clearly an ego thing, is my point. It's funny what the comment was, right? The written comment said, he punched my window so hard, I started driving better. And I think that's a great comment because my point that I've been making for a while now is these behaviors don't teach anyone a lesson. If you really think that when you beat someone up or do something to someone or intimidate them in some way, that they've learned the lesson that they need to learn there, you're wrong. That isn't how that works. What they've learned is to fear you or hate you or resent you or have some feeling about you, not about their own behavior and what they did. It's very rare. I'm not saying it never happens, but it's very rare that someone experiences that and goes, oh yeah, I probably should have driven better. I probably should have done X, Y, and Z. I should have been more considerate. I should have whatever. That almost never happens, guys. It's not how it works because those aren't effective. Those aren't effective teaching modalities. This idea that we're teaching lessons, we're really not teaching lessons. We are teaching people to absorb emotional damage, carry resentment and anger, and then usually project that onto someone else. It's dolphins and porpoises, if you guys know about that. Dolphins are known for picking on each other. and they have a hierarchy, and they bully each other. And the lowest dolphin on the totem pole of the hierarchy will then in turn, abuse porpoises, and they'll kill them. They'll punt them out of the water. Porpoises are smaller than dolphins. And so it's clear the way this energy exchange works. It just flows downhill to the next victim, the next weaker person, whatever. And no lesson has been learned. So I never see anything good on this. And by the way, I used to be that kind of person. I used to be an angry person. I used to be someone who would probably, I have punched windows actually. I carried guns. I've pointed guns at people. I've done really crazy things. And that was in my older life when I was, what I would call unconscious or unaware or just plain stupid. I don't know what I would say about it. Not my proudest moments. But now that I've learned what I've learned, I've become far more aware. I can tell you that the desired effect isn't being had if the desired effect is for the person to change their behavior. Now, my feeling is that isn't the desired effect, guys. My feeling is that the desired effect for the individual punching the window there is to feel superior, not to teach a lesson. To feel superior, to feel powerful, to feel in control. That it's an ego boost for them. Has nothing to do with teaching a lesson. That's my deep suspicion about all this stuff, including my motivations for what I did when I was basically a kid or a younger man and pretty stupid. So what's your goal, right? If your goal is to teach somebody a lesson, that isn't effective. It just doesn't work. And I guarantee you we can do a deep dive into that, and you'll find it doesn't work. Now, if your goal is to feel superior, feel strong, feel dominant, then it does work. That will work. You'll feel all those things, and you're also risking your life. Because you do that to the wrong person, we've already seen in several other videos that are out there, where someone just gets shot the minute that happens. And in the instances that I've seen in the recent videos where that took place, those people were either acquitted of charges or never charged in the first place because they basically were deemed as having justifiable cause for using deadly force. I don't know about in that case, it didn't seem to have a gun, but point is that you're opening yourself up to serious harm to feel superior and dominant over another person. And you can do that all day long. Go ahead and play that game. But I don't know what you're getting out of it, because I feel like it's an endless pit. It's like eating donuts. Like you're never going to be satisfied. And eventually you're going to come up against someone that you're not dominant over, and they're going to prove that to you very quickly. And so I don't understand the game. It's kind of interesting. Like if any of you guys watched, the sad thing about us humans, we seem to be very similar to chimpanzees, if you ask me. I don't know if any of you guys out there may have seen that documentary show. It's done really well, Chimp Empire. Chimp Empire was mind-blowing how they filmed it and everything. And the leader of the main clan that you're following in the documentary is named Jackson. Jackson lives to I think he only lives to 36 years old or something like that. He's kind of the emperor of his clan, and he rules pretty much with an iron fist. And has his, inner circle cohorts, and he monitors his borders and goes to war with other chimps, and it doesn't go real well. Jackson dies kind of a hard death. It takes him several days. He gets cornered and isolated by the opposing army, and they basically beat and rip the hell out of him, and he climbs off into, the bush somewhere. It takes him a few days to finally die. And chimps can live to be like 60 years old, maybe older, I don't know. Obviously in captivity they live longer, but that's what I see in this, right? Like, yeah, you can be the head chimp, but it's just, I don't see any real benefit in it. It doesn't lead to a peaceful life. It doesn't lead to anyone learning anything from you other than to fear you or decide to test you. It really doesn't lead anywhere that I can see that I want to have anything to do with it. And so that's what my practical or pragmatic viewpoint is on it, which is what the name of the channel is, Pragmatic Ego Management. There's no benefit. The costs far outweigh any benefit that I can see. The one benefit, I guess, that is there is that, I got my hit. I got my fix of feeling dominant and superior. And that's what you got. And to me, it's not tangible at all. I don't know what you do with that. And I think it's coming from a place of insecurity anyway. So does that mean that you go out now, because you did that, you're just like way better with the ladies or something, or now you're making all this money because you're way more confident in business, or you're just like, I don't see that translating to any of that is what I'm saying. Like I don't really see it translating to a usable, measurable anything other than a life of constant conflict and being upset and angry and miserable. If a guy came up to my window like that, right? And I need to, the video is very quick. Like I almost need to see, because I kind of pay attention to the individual on the other side. Is our guy inside the car saying anything? Does he say anything?
Are you done?
Oh, that's what he says. Are you done? I don't want to see it again as long as you point that out. Because I was paying attention to the, you know what I mean? I'm looking out. Are you done?
Which in a situation like that are kind of fighting words.
Yeah, are you done is not, that's what I wanted to get to next. So I am going to be releasing a video here soon on the other channels I was telling you about, because I just did one yesterday and I've been working on this. What it's about is how our delivery, our tone, our words, our actions affect others. So are you done is a certain level of, I believe with the tone, could be disrespect. It actually depends on how it's delivered, but it's not a great choice of words. Because it could be like, hey, are you done? Like I want to kind of explain. I doubt that was the tone that was given. It's more of a sign of disrespect and I'm dismissing you now. And your behavior is whatever, seen as inferior. The delivery of a message is extremely important to the idea that I'm operating from, which is this Toltec shamanism idea of stalking, which stalking in our culture has this connotation of like, stalking a woman or something like this, looking in people's windows. In this context, it has to do with stalking prey, and the prey in this context is the ego. So the first thing that has to be done is to look within and see where your own ego triggers are and not to respond to them. So are you done, to me, is a response to an ego trigger within himself that then leads to making that statement and delivering that statement a certain way, which then is going to fuel further this individual who's clearly triggered, like off the scales and ready to become violent. So your interactions with others, and this is where I've been, it's very appropriate to what I've been talking about and thinking about. My interactions have an impact on others around me. And, at a practical level, my words, the way I deliver those words, my actions, facial expressions that I maintain while delivering those words and actions, the attitude, the tone in which I communicate those words and actions, all are having some sort of impact on the other person. Now, everyone is responsible for their own, reactions, their own responses, their own internalized emotional state, which in the way we look at the world oftentimes, from a less intentional, I would say less aware and less possessing of free will, is to look at things from the perspective of, you made me feel this way. When you did X, Y, and Z, you made me feel this way. That's bullshit. But this is where it becomes paradoxical. It's bullshit, and yet we know that it's more likely that someone is going to feel a certain type of emotion, that it's a higher probability of choice that they're going to feel a certain type of emotion based off a certain type of delivery. So that being said, there is some sort of impact happening at a practical level. But then my question goes further than that to an almost metaphysical or quantum level of how much are my thoughts, inner emotions, and inner state even having an impact on my external world. Practically speaking, my thoughts, inner emotions, inner state are probably having an impact on my external actions, my external words, delivery, tone, and attitude. But internally, almost at a quantum level, because it does appear that we're living in this completely interconnected matrix of the universe, they are probably all having an effect. So, that's where it gets interesting with like the Schrodinger, wave potential and it collapsing to a single singularity at each event taking place. And the idea of the Schrodinger's cat being locked in the box is where these thought experiments led to the realization that no one can ever be separate from the reality that they're observing. So we're all interacting with our reality. So with that being said, the way I'm going to handle a situation like that, first of all, if a guy's going to get out violently, and he's going to come and get into that posture right there, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, I'm sorry, man. What did I do that upset you? Is there something else bothering you about today that I could be helpful with in some way? Did you have a bad day? Did something shitty happen to you today? Whatever it is. And I have to be so careful with that delivery because that can even come off the wrong way too. Now, I've been in this situation. I've been here where I had a guy do something similar to what we're seeing there. He didn't get out of the car. But I was driving, and actually, this was in another video I released. He was driving in a Walmart parking lot. He was speeding. He was probably doing 50. I was camping in the high desert, and I was leaving the Walmart, and I was in my big overcab camper, and I was not in a hurry, and I certainly wasn't going to speed off all crazy. And I was crossing like a thoroughfare. It's not a road, but it's like, when you're in these parking lots, you'll have like a lengthy kind of street, and it's passing all the parking lot areas, and he's driving in that area, and I'm crossing it, and he's doing like 50. And I'm pulling out, and he's like going to T-bone me. And he doesn't want to slow down. And he was way off in the distance, but that's how fast he was going. And so he's like honking his horn. He's like, flip me off. He's like, oh, like all angry, like, fuck you. And as he gets up, and this is where it gets interesting. So I got a friend with me at the time who's of a juvenile mindset. He probably has a type of autism. We're not sure. He did a lot of meth his whole life, which certainly didn't help whatever the condition is that he always had. And he's pretty juvenile. He knows that I train martial arts. So what he said to me is like, hey, get out and teach this guy a lesson. I immediately turned to him and I said, you shut your fucking mouth, because he was going to cause us real problems. He shut up because he knew better. And then this guy pulled up to me, rolled down his window, and I rolled down my window. He's like, hey, fucking get out of the car, motherfucker. Like, you want to fight? And I was like, no. But I said, I have a feeling that this isn't what's bothering you. I was like, would you like to talk about what really is bothering you? And I said it in a certain way. And in that moment, because of the way I delivered it, and I really said it in a way of like, hey, man, I'm worried about you. He was looking for that fight, right? He's not going to get what he wants there. So he didn't engage with me further. He just like hit the gas and floored it and just took off, angry, still angry. But I wasn't his target anymore. There was no way he was going to target me. And he had was probably his girlfriend in the car. And I turned to my friend, I was like, look, you don't understand what's going on there. So this guy looked like he was probably on meth. He was kind of skinny, scraggly looking white dude with his girlfriend in a beat up car. Had that tweaker vibe, right? And so physically, in a physical altercation, it's very unlikely he's going to do very well against me. But that's not the real world. So I don't know what guns he's got in the car, what knives he's got in the car. I don't know if his girlfriend's carrying a little Derringer. I don't know that this guy gets a lucky something and I go to the ground with him, that his girlfriend just doesn't punch it in the car and run me over. Like, all kinds of terrible things can happen very, very quickly. It's just stupid. It's just dumb. And I keep saying this about this whole thing, about even with the martial arts community and people who think like, oh, I'm a trained jiu-jitsu, 3rd degree black belt. I'm a, kickboxing champion. None of that matters. None of that matters in the real world. Last episode we did on the stabbing at the waterway, right? I don't think that guy was particularly trained. We don't know. But 5 people got stabbed in the matter of like a second and a half, 2 seconds. It seemed like it happened so fast. It was really scary how that happened. The blade was only like 2.5 inches, maybe 3 max. It's a very small blade. Killed a man and seriously injured, 4 or 5 other people. Nothing to play with. That's the real world. That's it. And you're not. That's the thing about the tough guy game. Like, you're not Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin's probably one of the biggest tough guys in the world right now, right? And whoever's at the head of our U.S., I wouldn't say our president's tough, but whoever these guys are that are pulling the strings, that are dropping bombs elsewhere and doing whatever. Like, those are the real players. You're nowhere near it. So why even like act like you are? Like, even the guys who think they're tough in these fighting circuits, even UFC, no, you're not. You're easily touched, easily killed. And it won't be done physically. It's like Putin when he puts a radioactive isotope on your doorknob. That's what I always like to tell people. They think they're engaging in realism. You're not engaging in realism. You're not even close to it. Because if I wanted to take you out, I'm not going to do it in a like puff my chest out way. I'm going to find a way to poison you. I'm going to find a way to get you locked up. I'm going to find a way to do something to you that's really going to, it's going to come out of nowhere. So it's just none of this stuff. It's just an unrealistic viewpoint on the world, and we're not getting anywhere with it. We're not learning anything. We're not doing better. as a society, and we're just hurting each other, and just hurting each other emotionally, hurting each other physically, not teaching anyone anything. We're not becoming more aware. It's a mess. Stop behaving this way. It doesn't work. And the weird thing is I get it. So what the problem is this, is I think there's so many people walking around, this is what I'm realizing, how important it is to believe in something. It's important to believe in something, to have a cohesive belief system, whatever that is. So like, I kind of question the atheistic perspective, but I don't have a problem with it. It's fine, that's where they arrive at. I think they're missing a few things. I think they're also arriving at a place where, again, they think they know it all, and I have a major problem with the idea that you know it all, because you don't. It's clear we don't know it all. So it's like, that's one of the problems I have with that. And then arriving, though, what I'm trying to do is arrive at a place of belief system, cohesive belief system, which will deductively result in an ethical, conviction-based system, right? Values that I rely on for how I'm going to interact with someone. I'm sharing some of those values with you right now. So, and those come from my belief that the universe is interconnected, and that if I haul off and kill this guy or get in some fist fight with him or whatever and dominate him, let's say I'm the guy who comes out like, Jackson, the head chimp in this whole thing, that all I've done is dominated myself. All I've done is subjugated a part of myself that's part of this entire cohesive universe, and that we're living in an illusion that's really foisted upon us by the ego that tells us that we are separate material entities that can have an effect on another material aspect in this universe and feel like it doesn't affect us, like it doesn't affect me. But I think that's an illusion. I don't think it's true. And that comes from my belief that we're living in a completely interconnected, most likely multidimensional universe that is not actually based in a material reality. That's where I've arrived in my beliefs. But and that there is a driving, overguiding force, and that overguiding force is not a bearded man, but something we can never even fathom, and that it does have one directive, and that is for it to become aware of itself. This entire universe is attempting to become aware of itself. It's a panpsychism model along with a tweak that has led me to this place. And I believe it because it's helped me reach a place of real peace, and I've found myself to be able to help people, and I have found myself to be able to teach people lessons, real lessons, not lessons about how dominant I am, but actual lessons about awareness and how to live their lives better. So I've seen it be effective. I haven't seen that kind of behavior we just witnessed in the video be effective, and all I see is damage coming from it. So I'm going to leave it there for now. We'll talk more about this stuff.
No, I just throw myself back to my other half year engineer, so I just try calling them.
I'll give you an opportunity, and I'll take the video. That's going to be your one and only option. Alright, there you go. You don't have bad results. I'll buy this gold. I know it's tough, but there's other ways. Calls for help, right? Yeah, it's cool. 947 ain't worth, especially if you're out on bond and stuff. Alright, Jamie, don't quit out, okay?
She on probation? Yeah. Well, this is what I'm talking about delivery and about the impact. So how does that woman feel about the system, about the situation that she's going through, versus the delivery we saw in the last video, punching the window and having this angry, dominant thing, which police are guilty of that oftentimes. We've seen police do the dominant thing, right? When she says she doesn't have anything, right? How many times have we seen officers, turn into the tyrant cop? Don't you fucking lie to me, and then go into that mode. And what are the results? I think this is a much better delivery. And I think what you have with people who are struggling is a feeling of isolation and not being a part of the in crowd. Not being a part of, the thriving community. And that's a big problem. That's, when I was mentioning this chimp empire, for those of you who haven't seen it, the hierarchy is interesting how it works, because within the hierarchy, certain members of the tribe get better food, they get better treatment, they get better friendships, they get a lot better things being closer to the higher ups in the group. This is very much like humans. And so when you're left out in the cold, how do you feel about those higher ups? In that documentary, there are opposing forces within the tribe that aren't too happy about it and are powerful. There were up-and-comers there that are vying for Jackson's position of power because they're not too happy with how they've been kept outside. They've been kept outside of the group and not fed the same way and not given the same amount of attention and care. And so now what happens? Now you have an opposing force. And that's where the art of stalking really comes from. See, one of the rules of the art of stalking is never be the boss. So this cop's in a tough position because there's no way for him to really not be the boss. He is the boss there. When you get into really tricky, creative ways of manipulating people into becoming aware, the word manipulation has a real negative connotation in our modern world, unfortunately. And I think manipulation is something I don't have a better word for it, because manipulation is what we're all doing. It's just, what is the intention of our manipulation? Is it nefarious and self-seeking and self-benefiting? Or is it manipulation to protect? Is it manipulation to guide? Is it manipulation to teach? Because anyone out there who's a parent is a manipulator. You're manipulating your children in one way or another. So manipulation is a word that I want to try and preface so that people don't have a negative reaction to it. We're always manipulating. It's just with what intention and how are we delivering that manipulation? What are we doing? What is our goal? In the art of stalking manipulation, the goal is increased awareness for all, including oneself. So that means the goal is not self-benefit. The minute it starts to become self-benefit, the ideology surrounding this is that you are headed for the fall. And their ideology, of course, is surrounding this idea that we're living in a spiritual world and that there is a spiritual awareness that is paying attention to what you're doing. Now, not everyone may agree with that. Some people, again, are atheists or whatever. So it really depends on what you believe. But belief, that's what I'm saying is so important, is what you believe is going to affect your world in a powerful way. Making this woman feel like maybe someone cares could have a huge impact on her future attitude. And it also removes that resentment towards law enforcement. It removes resentment towards authority. That's our biggest problem. I have a lot of resentment towards law enforcement. I've seen them behave in completely the opposite way of this. And we've all seen it now, These streaming channels have done a great job of kind of exposing the tyranny that's out there and the ego that's involved in all levels of authority enforcement. That's the problem with authority enforcement. So when you're trying to teach someone, being an authority figure is not a positive from this particular perspective of teaching someone a lesson. That's the problem with that first video of the guy punching the window. It's better to bring in the human element and show that you care about the person. The razor's edge and the paradox that's being walked from this idea that I'm sharing is one of ruthlessness and ultimate caring for the individual. And so those two ideas they're opposing forces. But understanding why they're in the same room together is understanding what we're being ruthless towards. We're ruthless towards ego. First, you have to understand ego and be able to identify ego. Within yourself, you have to identify ego first, then identify ego within others, and understand how to not trigger other people's egos or how to diminish their egos, but you always have to be in control of your own, and that's called impeccability. Once we're at that level of being able to control our own egos, and we can witness it and see it in others, then we can figure out kind of how to guide someone around those pitfalls to get them to actually see maybe the error of their ways or the awareness that they're missing, or teaching them something about the world that's done in a perspective that increases their awareness. So we're ruthless to ego, but we're not ruthless to the person, to the human being. The problem with a lot of the times we see this in authority interactions, especially with law enforcement, is we see someone who's ruthless, but they're ruthless to people. And that's a different issue altogether. They're ruthless to people, again, because we're back to being Jackson the head chimp. And a lot of these cops like to be that. Thankfully, not all of them, but it's still a reality. So in order to avoid that, we have to learn how to manage ruthlessness and ultimate caring at the same time. What are we ruthless towards? We're ruthless towards ego, within ourselves and in others. And then we're very caring towards the organism, towards the human being that's in front of us. And that's a very tricky razor's edge to walk. What he does a good job here is showing that he cares about her. That is what everyone wants to feel. That you give a shit about me as a human having a human experience. That's what everybody wants to feel. That's why with the guy who's punching the window, I'm saying I'm going to do the same thing with him. I'm going to say, hey, how did we reach this point? What is it that got you here? What can I do to make that better? Versus, are you done? And then we're going to escalate to who's going to be more violent faster and who's going to be the most dominant chimp in the room. So, yeah, I think I really agree with this. Some people might say, well, she's a criminal. She should have been locked up. She didn't get taught a lesson here. I think you're wrong. That's what I'm saying. I think you're dead wrong. And I think this is what I've been starting to dabble with and I'm starting to get involved with is talking about the errors of our criminal justice system. The more isolated you make someone feel, the more stigmatized and judged you make them feel, the more you make them feel they don't have opportunities with the in community, with the people who are thriving, the more you make them feel like they're left out in the cold and that you don't care, guess what they are going to do? The more they're going to resent you, the more they're going to say this is all shit, and then the more they're going to try and tear it down and commit the same crimes, if not worse crimes, and become smarter and more nefarious at the things that they do because they target that resentment and all that responsibility onto that opposing force. And that's what we want to avoid. And I think the cop does a good job doing that here. There was consequence. She could have said no a second time, and I have a feeling he probably would have arrested her. But he gave her that opportunity, and then he turned it on its head, and then he bought her, the items to show her that he did give a shit. So that was great.
Yeah.
I think that was great. Yeah.
What's up, Pat? How are you? What's your name? Chris. Chris? I'm Frank. Nice to meet you. Israel. How old are you today? It's your birthday? 25. Is it your birthday? Yes, sir. You're not just making that up. Let me see. You try to light your candle, man, but the wind blew off for you. But, are you allergic to nuts? Hell no. Alright, we got you again. We got all that. It's just ritual. We come without you. We come to the door. Hey, we're happy that you're 25. That's a big number. Oh, okay. Happy birthday to you.
Damn.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Chris. Happy birthday to you. There you go, brother. Blow up. Make a wish. There you go. You got it. Hey, we wish you the best birthday, okay? You gonna be all right, boys? You gonna be all right? Good? Yeah, okay. You gonna be all right?
Wow.
This is the boy I'm gonna ask for. All right? Okay. Don't need it all in one sitting, all right?
Mm.
Take it easy, brother. God bless you.
Do we know what department that was?
Don't know.
They had an accent. It almost seemed like New York, could have been New Jersey. Seemed back east to me. But funny because some of those departments get really bad raps for a lot of the crap they do. But that obviously is one of the better ones. Do we know where the source came from, or do we know what that is? It seemed pretty legit. It seemed pretty legit, guys. That's all I'm gonna say. Look, would we need police if people felt like they belonged, like they felt like they're part of the community? I guess you would still have, maybe the people who are somehow have abnormal brains, right? Psychopaths, maybe the real predators out there will still exist. I don't know how that all works 100%. I don't think we know in general, really. But I think a big portion of the criminal element that goes on and the harm that's caused is certainly from the things we've been talking about, which is feeling isolated, feeling shunned, feeling like you're not part of the thriving community, feeling like you're marginalized and held outside in the cold, and those feelings start to mount towards resentment, right? You see the people who see the guy driving the Ferrari or whatever, you see the guy with, you know, the nice car and the hot women in his car and the, you know, the expensive suit and clothes, and he's going off to his great life, and you're the guy on the street barely making a buy, leaving your, you know, your low-paying wage job. I'm not saying that that's the best mindset for that individual on the lower end of that depiction to have. In fact, I think it's the wrong one, but it's still that high probability chance they're going to feel that way. And it's another paradox of what should the world be versus what should your internal mindset be. Like, are we living in an optimal world? I think no one out there could ever say we are. I can't imagine someone saying that we're living in this perfect world, because we all know we're not. So the mindset is difficult to achieve for some people, that positive mindset, because you look and you go, this is all shit. And why is it shit? Well, it's mostly because of other people. That's the world we're in now too, because we're not, you know, when I remember when I was, I don't know what level of schooling it was at, but we'd talk about like protagonists in stories, and there's like man versus nature, man versus, you know, internal temptation, maybe, whatever it is, right? There's no more man versus nature. You're not struggling with nature out there. None of you are, unless you chose to live in Nome, Alaska, or you chose to be some homesteader, or you chose to be someone who's a survivalist. The rest of us who are kind of pretty much living within society, it's not us against nature. Every once in a while, if you're living in Florida or other places, maybe you're dealing with a hurricane or, you know, those kind of problems. They do exist, but it's not like when we were, you know, primitive man and it was really man versus nature, or like, you know, the expanding, you know, days of the frontier. Like, we're not in any of that anymore. So it's always man against man now. It's always fighting against other humans for resources, for, you know, better career opportunity, for better wages or salary, or, you know, wealth improvement. We're always fighting those things. And so when you're up against that and realizing that other humans are really at fault for it, it's hard not to have resentment towards that. It's not the best strategic mindset for you as that individual, but it's very likely that people are going to feel that way. And so from a policing perspective, it makes a whole lot of sense to be proactive and make people feel like they're part of a community, and make them feel like you're not just the authority figure that's there to slap people in cuffs and rough them up and throw them in the back of a car, put them behind bars, you know, shoot them if they don't comply, those type of things. That's only going to breed that resentment further. And I think that's a lot of, like, when I've mentioned, you know, the civil rights attorneys channels and Israel Abaya's channel, I forget what he calls his channel. He's got a good channel too. A lot of these channels out there that are geared towards what a lot of times the negative, and is the negative side of policing. The problem I have with it is, look what the image you're presenting and look what you're doing. You're setting yourself up for failure as an authoritative body by doing that. You're setting yourself up to have people be more violent towards you, to not be helpful to your situation. If you are, you know, in need of someone to kind of run to your aid, people are just going to leave you there in the gutter if they really have a negative viewpoint towards you, because you've shown that you really just don't give a shit about the population you're policing. Yeah, I think that's the big problem of ego. Ego's main issue, I think, that comes up again and again and again is resentment. It's self-pity and resentment, self-pity and resentment. And if we want to avoid triggering the self-pity and the resentment that can lead to violence and lead to these type of problems, then we have to give the individuals this feeling of, this person cares. This person really cares about me. And I think the police did a good job there. And to the point of, like, what was the potential outcome without that? What, you know, someone who's in that desperate need of companionship, feeling like they're part of something, having someone say a couple kind words to them, how far removed are they from maybe being violent towards the community at large? It's hard to say. Each individual is different, but it's definitely a risk. And I think we can say with almost certainty that in all the school shootings we've seen, the violent shootings and mass, killings that we've seen in all sorts of public settings, that those people did not feel part of a community. That's what they felt. They felt isolated. They felt like people didn't give a shit about them. They felt like people didn't care if they lived or died. In fact, they probably felt like people would be happy if they died. And so they went and decided, this all plays very well into the idea of this art of stalking that I've been talking about. And it gets even deeper with what we believe. Do we believe that we're not connected to each other? That we're only materially interacting with someone at a physical and maybe chemical level? If you believe that, it means that it's okay to cut people off and to shove them aside and to, if need be, enforce it to the level of even death if necessary. That's where that belief is going to lead. If you don't believe that, if you believe we're all interconnected, we're all interconnected even with the entire universe and our ecosystem and our plants and animals and our whole environment, that's going to lead to a whole different result as well. I think it's clear that the majority of our civilization is operating from the idea that we live in a material world that is governed by what appears to be just materialistic in nature, and therefore it's not impactful if we say just go and kill a guy like the one we just saw and just get rid of him. And I don't think that's true, actually. That's why I've arrived at this interconnected belief system that I have. And that means that the difficult people that are in my life, the difficult people that present toxic behaviors, the difficult people that, out of their own damage and trauma, try to hurt me, it isn't okay for me to just cut them out either. That's where I operate from. But I have to manage a very difficult lattice work of boundaries and ruthlessness at the same time showing that I care. That is a difficult razor's edge to walk, and I think that's where we all need to head as a society, is to learn how to walk that walk. Because the real enemy is the ego. The ego is not your amigo. And I think that is what we're dealing with at an evolutionary level. That ego is what's threatening our very existence as a species. If we don't conquer it, we're going to kill ourselves.
What is that? Eyelashes? You ever see those plants that eat the flies? Venus flytrap. I'm just playing, Daddy, you're beautiful.
He just fucking with you, Daddy.
You're beautiful, alright?
He fucking with you. Smile.
Look at her,
Take
look
that
at
down and smile.
So how are you guys related?
It's my niece.
Oh, okay.
It's my niece, and I wasn't speeding, officer. I'm sorry.
I don't know, I clocked you doing 110.
Man, your clock thing is messed up, man. I'm telling you, there's something wrong with your clock, man. I'm really doing like 95. No, I mean 65.
Yeah, okay. Alright.
Sorry
I'll let
about
you
that.
slide this time, man.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, man.
You take care of yourself, okay? Alright, you take care. I'll just play with my eyelashes.
Hey, man, let's go. We got off.
Oh, that's a strange helmet he has on his head. What is that for? Anyway, yeah, that's good. These are all nice interactions. We should be able to have more of those. It's interesting there, right? Let's say obviously that cop wasn't concerned about public safety, so I think the joke about 110 and 95 and all that stuff is nowhere near what they were doing. But they probably were going over the speed limit. He checked him a little bit, like, hey, slow it down. And then they had a nice little humorous interaction. That's a much better way to interact with people and to have them start to consider, like, hey, you know what, maybe I don't need to go that fast. Maybe as you build rapport with someone too, what happens, like, if you don't have respect for someone, I'll be honest with you, I speed all the time. I don't have a lot of respect for the police that I've had interactions with. I've had a lot of negative interactions with police. If I had a more positive viewpoint of the authority bodies that are running things, I might actually be less likely to speed. Because then I would feel kind of guilty in a way. Because then as you start to build rapport with someone, you build respect with someone, you start to build those things, you're like, man, I shouldn't be doing this because I'm kind of doing something they don't want me to do, and I kind of respect them and I like them, so I don't really want to do that. But if I think of these people like, you know what, they're just pieces of shit. I really don't like those guys. All they do is throw their weight around. Fuck them. I'm going to speed. I'm going to do what I want, right? That's the problem. That I think would, that's the whole issue. And this is all comes down to the ego again. It's the same thing. And it's my ego. It's my ego that's involved there that's having that same interaction of saying, you know what, fuck these cops. I'm going to speed because I don't give a shit about them or whatever it is I'm going to do that's breaking the law, right? That's two sides of a coin, though. And it has to do with the delivery on one side and the reception on the other. And that's exactly what I'm talking about is this strange psychological interplay that's taking place. This is a far better interaction here. So now, if I have that interaction with a cop and then I know he's patrolling that area, I might start to feel like, man, I probably shouldn't speed through here. So-and-so, officer so-and-so, he's kind of a nice guy. I'm not going to make him pull me over again and then make him feel, like he's been nice to me and now I'm taking advantage of his kindness. Now it's going to be, you know what I mean? There's a certain amount of feeling like, okay, we've got this bond or rapport, and I think that's what policing should be. Police should have a relationship with the community. Community should feel like policing is part of their community and that they're there to help, that they really are there to help. And I think most of us probably don't feel that way. And I think the problem gets worse in the larger the urban area, right? The more people there are. That's my whole problem with population. Once you become just a number, you're just a number and just a face of, a faceless face really amongst masses, then all of that psychological interaction that leads to a cohesive community really goes out the window. That's my problem with population. That's why I think people need to slow down on having children, because you're creating a world where you're just a nobody, and nobodies don't get treated very well. So, and that's an ego thing too, but still it's a reality. And it's also kind of a natural thing to happen. You just got too many of anything, then no individual really sticks out anymore. There's no, you know what I mean? And it's also a simple equation of supply and demand. We've got so many billions of people on this planet, they're expendable, they're not worth that much. And it all kind of comes off in the interactions, and we see it in the larger city areas and policing in larger areas. Not that small town cops can't be real assholes. They absolutely can be for the same but different reasons, and it's all ego. But even with mega population, we should always be addressing our own egos and trying to achieve the most optimum level of interaction with anyone, because that's what's going to lead to a better society. And our delivery is so important in that, how we deliver and how we receive messages. You can be on the receiving end of a nasty message, like with the very first video, the guy punching the window, and you can turn that around by delivering a very different message in the face of that. It can have an enormous impact on someone to not receive the energy they expect they're going to receive. That can have a powerful impact on somebody. So, yeah, those are all great videos. And all very much about what I'm about, which is talking about how important addressing this particular mindset and attitude that leads to more conflict, more misery, and no benefit that I can see. So yeah, those were good. All right, guys, that's it. We only did the one on the political stuff, but yeah, I still, that's just a pessimistic viewpoint of where we're at, and that's all because of the monetary circumstance we're living in. The rest of the videos were all about ego. Two sides of that coin. One was all kind of, puffing up the ego and feeding the ego, and the others were, I think, mitigating and diminishing it, which is what this channel's about, and trying to find the best outcome we possibly can for all those involved, and not always be seeking some self-gratification or feeling superior or dominant to others that doesn't lead to anything positive. So I really like those videos today, guys. It was good stuff, and that's interesting timing because this is what I've kind of been talking about. And I think it's really something we should ask, what we believe about the world. And why do we believe it? And how does it impact how I interact with somebody? And I think that's a really important question you should ask yourself. What is this world? I don't care what it is. You believe in Jesus, you believe in whatever. If you're atheist, I wonder, how do you manage that? A lot of times when I hear atheists talk about it, they manage it from a perspective of love, I guess. And then they talk about, the neurochemical experience and that they have empathy. And so they empathize with others. That's why they'll treat others better. if that works for you, good. But I don't think it really does, because I think in that model, it still gives you an out to say if some people behave in this kind of way, it's fine to cut them off completely and to judge them harshly and to approach criminal justice and everything else a certain way. And so I do think there's a problem there. I don't think atheism really works, but I'm open to discussion on that. All right, that's it, guys.